Today, we're going to talk about experiencing more flow by reducing cognitive load. In case you haven't watched the motivation for flow video, please go ahead and watch that one first. It'll be useful. The flow foundations have three pillars: motivation, cognitive load, and biology. And with those pillars in place, you'll get to experience more flow. And what I mean by flow is more frequent, easier to access, and deeper flow states. In today's video, we're going to be focusing on the cognitive load piece. So a quick plan for this video: we're going to talk about what cognitive load is. We're going to talk about why we need to reduce cognitive load. And we're going to talk about how to do that. And all of that, when you have them in place, is going to lead to more flow over time. So the first question we really have to ask is, what does cognitive load mean? Cognitive load is an umbrella term, and it basically means everything that's in your head. What does that mean? So we can look at it in two ways, either on a macro level or a micro level. The macro is kind of a bird's eye view, overall picture of your life, big pieces in place. The micro is the really nitty-gritty and detailed level, and I'll give examples of each of them. So on the macro level, I'm talking about things like wanting to move house or change job, wanting to be in a relationship or exit a bad relationship, having more stuff to pay attention to, work projects, a spouse, a vehicle, kids, pets. With a lot of these things, it leads to a lot of cognitive load then compared to someone who didn't have a spouse, didn't have a vehicle, didn't have any kids, and didn't have any pets. It's just more stuff to pay attention to, stuff that needs our attention, our time, our energy. On the micro level, it's a lot more detailed. It's things like to-do lists, picking up laundry, groceries, decluttering your desk, cleaning the house, cleaning your room, making small decisions like what kind of restaurant should I go to? What kind of pasta sauce should I buy? And all of those things lead to high cognitive load. And a high cognitive load, the next question is, why does that relate to flow, and why do we want to reduce it? So a high cognitive load, when you have a lot of stuff in your head, that leads to low accomplishment, low energy, and then self-doubt. Now, why is that? So having a high cognitive load leads to distraction and procrastination because there are more things on your radar, more things to pay attention to. So there are more opportunities to get distracted and more opportunities to procrastinate. It leads to option paralysis, like the paradox of choice. The ironic thing about having too many options is we don't know what to pick. It's a difficult choice. It also leads to lack of focus, meaning that you're gonna be slow with making any progress and get less things done. That in turn is gonna lead to less energy because of the stuff that you need to get done anyway, you're doing it less efficiently. And so you're burning yourself out a little bit more than if you only had fewer things to pay attention to. That also leads to less willpower, less headspace for flow, and overall more worry, more overwhelm, and more self-doubt because of the lack of accomplishment and because of the low energy. We start to question ourselves. And that's because it's actually a negative, self-fulfilling cycle. When we have less focus, we get less done. And because we get less done, we have less energy. And that leads to us having less focus. And the self-perpetuation of this leads us to having more self-doubt and not believing in ourselves. In contrast to that, lower cognitive load leads to more flow, high energy, and confidence. And why is that? Pretty much the exact opposite reasons as high cognitive load. When you have lower cognitive load, you're less prone to distractions and procrastination. You have less option paralysis because there are less things to pay attention to. you have a clearer focus, and it's much more easy to make progress on any one thing, meaning you get to close out tasks and you have less self-doubt because you are making progress. And because of that, you're less worried, less overwhelmed, you have increased willpower and headspace for flow, and that results in more flow, which results in higher energy and higher confidence. And pretty much the opposite of high cognitive load, this leads to a positive self-reinforcing cycle where you get more flow gets more things done leads to being able to focus more as a long-term skill, and that leads to more flow, etc., etc. And flow correlates to happiness, so more happiness is never a bad thing. So the next question we should ask is, how do we reduce cognitive load? It's pretty clear now why reducing it is important. Going from a state of having many things in our head and many options to a state where everything is zen and organized is the ideal. But how do we do it? So we're going to do an exercise, so feel free to pause the video now, get a pen and paper out, or open a Word or a notepad on your computer. There will not be any need to rewind the video. It'll all go through step by step. So I'm going to resume now. In this exercise, I just want to briefly talk through it. The idea is we're going to start and focus on the macro level, high-level view of your life. And we're going to examine everything that we spend time on using a DEL-DO framework. DEL-DO, I mean delete, delegate, delay, and do. Think these things in that order of what can you do, and I'll briefly explain each one. By delete, I mean, can I completely eliminate this thing from my focus for the next few days, weeks, or months? And it's important to note that when I say delete, that means complete elimination from life with no planned reaction of whatever that thing is. In contrast to a delay, which a delay requires a planned date for following up and executing it. So elimination is just completely dropping it out. Delegate, pretty obvious. Can I get someone else to do it, even if it means I pay them? And this doesn't have to be a professional service like accounting. It can be, if I'm spending so much time walking to get groceries, can I just get Deliveroo's instead? You know, get the groceries delivered. Delay, how much can I push this back without sacrificing the quality or the safety net that I'm required to ensure that I satisfactorily complete this task? If I can delay it, schedule it, put it in the calendar now, because putting it in the calendar will take it out of your head and into the calendar, thereby reducing cognitive load. The big idea here is really, we want to eliminate as much of the big stuff as possible first, as it will have the highest positive returns on our cognitive load. Feel free to take a quick screenshot here or pause the video to take some notes before I go into the actual exercise. So now the exercise. There's a few examples of macro level cognitive load that I want to go over. Having multiple big work projects, having a lot of either personal or volunteering projects, any relationship issues of any kind. It doesn't have to be romantic. It can be platonic. Any financial worries, any big purchases ahead, any trips that you must do, for example, going to a wedding, anything that is stressing you out or adding to the things in your head. Changing your life situation, like considering moving or changing jobs, having kids or getting a pet, online courses or in-person courses, things to learn, books to read, any one-off tasks that keep getting procrastinated. Those are things that are worth noting and going through with this exercise. Things like taxes or life admin, and any repeated decision-making situations, or any significant uses of your daily time. For example, if you spend an hour a day between news and TV and social media, that is also worth considering, because if you eliminate it, you free up that much time and therefore reduce your cognitive load, especially if it's not something you care that much about. So the actual exercise, using that list of things for inspiration. And of course, this is not an exhaustive list, but write down all the things that you spend your time doing in the last week or two and categorize them if you haven't already. For example, if there are multiple projects at work, put them all under the work category. If there are multiple things under personal or leisure projects, put them all under that. Categorize them in a way that makes sense to you. And then once you've got the list of everything that you spend time doing, star or bold all the things that you absolutely cannot and would not eliminate. For example, if you have children, spending time with children is not something that you're gonna eliminate from your life. So you need to work around that. Obviously, everyone's situation is different, so you'll have to use your judgment there. And for everything that isn't starred or bold, so before you go ahead and put a star next to Netflix, reconsider your approach based on your values. For every single thing that you wrote down, ask yourself, is this important enough that it needs to use up some of my cognitive resources? That's the real question. And then go through that list again and rethink everything in terms of del do. So can I delete it? Can I delegate it? Can I delay it? If not, can I do it? Should I do it now? Should I do? Yeah. And once del do, think about the things that have not been automated or become habits. This is things like morning routines, evening routines, decisions that you have to make. If they're not automatic, then you might want to make life rules or decisions, such as, you know, when I'm in the restaurant, I'm always going to go for a vegetarian option. That's a simple example of a life rule that lowers cognitive load and automates your decision making a bit, because instead of looking at a full menu with 100 options, you're narrowing it down to 20 options, and it's a lot easier to pick. So that's what I mean by automate or make a habit. Create some life rules, or do something, make a decision that you can repeat and stick with for the rest of your life. And the other final option is pay someone to do it. So you pay someone to do it, then you don't have to worry about it. Of course, there are trade-offs to that, as there are with everything. But every decision that you make in this exercise should be based on the schedule of the next 2 weeks view, maximum. You don't want to be thinking about something that's happening in a month unless you need that full month to do the thing that needs to be done. But if it's a decision for 3 weeks or a month from now, you can completely delete or delay it and schedule it at that time. So you really want to be focused on the next week, ideally maximum 2 weeks, as you go through this exercise. And final quick note on this exercise is, of course, there are trade-offs, and sometimes it may be worth prioritizing something that's actually low priority just for the sake of closing it out and making room for higher priority things. And the same applies for whether you delete or delay low priority things. Again, in favor for making room for high priorities. So hopefully by now you'll have eliminated one big thing, or if not eliminated, at least reconfigured, reduced in size, or outsourced, and gone from a state of higher cognitive load to slightly lower cognitive load. And if it has been done well, or if it has had an impact, then you should be feeling a bit more of a sense of ease and relaxation as a result of this exercise. And that's what's going to allow for more space for flow, and it's going to allow for more focus. And that's essentially the gist of why reducing cognitive load is a foundational piece for experiencing more flow. So to summarize, in today's video, we talked about what cognitive load is, why do we need to reduce it, and how do we do that through an exercise. And if those pieces are in place, that'll lead to experiencing more flow. One final note, reducing cognitive load is a skill. It takes time and it takes practice, and there's no such thing as perfect. And that's why it's one of the foundations of flow. It's always operating in the background. So now that you have this knowledge, you can keep it in the back of your mind and look at everything that comes into your life from a cognitive load perspective, and it'll help you achieve more flow and make better decisions. If you enjoyed or found this video interesting or useful, make sure to hit the like or subscribe button for more videos like this. You can find more about flow on my website, or you can connect with me on Facebook or LinkedIn, or get in touch by email or book a call into my calendar if you want to discuss things a little bit more in depth. All the links for these will be found in the description below. Thank you so much for your time, energy, and attention. I'll see you guys in the next one. All the best.